Well, yeah, obviously the shorter the field you have to score touchdowns, the better you are. It's hard to go 75, 80 yards consistently over 12 plays without making a mistake somewhere along the line. So, yeah, there's two parts to that. It's the turnover aspect, and I think the Eagles were kind of at zero in that giveaway takeaway department. Last year they didn't give more away or take more away. I would like to see them be on the the positive side of that and have more takeaways than giveaways, obviously. And I think some of the things they did with his defense leads you to believe that, that could happen. Adding a James Bradbury at the other corner now, being able to pressure a quarterback.
Good morning. This is Birdies 365. I'm Tone DeShields II. He's John McMullen. And I am in for the sick Jody Mac. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. We are here by the one and only Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Tom, John, good to see you guys.
Ed Kracz, good to see you, buddy. SI.com, Eagles Today. Follow Ed on Twitter at KratzE. Where should we start today, Ed? We'll probably do our top 25 best Eagles players over at Sports Illustrated that you and I have been putting together. And I got a bone to pick with you at number 5, because that was my number 1 player.
Mm-hmm.
And he only fell at number 5 because of the disrespect that Ed Kracz showed Dallas Goedert. Come on. How do you have Dallas Goedert so far down that list?
Yeah, you got to explain that one to me, Ed. I got to be honest.
Well, at least it's not Nakobe Dean that we're talking about. I mean, that was a big convo last
Jody
week.
Today. So.
Yeah, no Jody. So now I got to deal with the Dallas Goedert disrespect. But no, hey, look, I think top 5, that's not a bad spot to be.
That's
if you're
not
Dallas
a bad
Goedert.
spot. Obviously, I'm just playing.
Yeah, I just, he's going to be a big part of the offense, obviously. 830 yards receiving last year. I mean, he could, everybody talks about Brown or Smith going over 1,000 yards. I mean, Goedert could be, one of those players that goes over 1,000 yards this year. And if he is, I will have him ranked higher than where I had him in my poll. I know you ranked him first, John, and I have no problem with that. I just think that there's another player out there that has not been revealed who belongs in that top spot.
There's a lot of good players on there. There's a lot of guys that are in the conversation, and that's part of the positive as we get closer and closer to training camp, is the fact that this roster looks pretty good, pretty deep. And, I say from 2 to 53, this looks like one of the best rosters in the NFL. The difference between the Eagles and the other contenders in the NFC, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, quarterback. Is this a championship level roster if Jalen Hurts carries his water as a, say top 15 quarterback in this league?
Yeah, I think the potential is there to be a championship, at least a division championship team. Whether or not they can push to the playoffs or, through the playoffs and win a game or two there, I'm not sure. I think it depends on how they all come together. There are some new players on this team. I know it's the second year for Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon on the defensive side. But they only had 5 OTA practices. I know they were scheduled for 6, but they canceled the last one and went bowling or some kind of bonding thing, shot free throws or had the rock, paper, scissors tournament. I'm not sure, but they only had 5 and they didn't practice real long. And it was only 7-on-7s. And, we're going to see more of that in training camp too. I don't think they're going to, do a whole lot of hitting. So it's going to be dependent on how they come together. I think if they're going to be a championship team, they have to get these pieces playing together and in sync. Remember 2011, I hate to say the dream team, but that never happened for that group of guys. So this is a good roster. In fact, I was looking through some potential camp battles as sort of a preview leading into camp. And, there's nothing really for the starting jobs to battle, right? I mean, it's all going to be backup spots is where the battles are going to lie. Maybe you could say right guard is a battle to start between Ciamalo and Driscoll. I think Ciamalo is going to be the starter there, but when you look at a roster that's that deep where there's no battles to be the starter, but only battles to be the backups. I mean, that's a pretty good roster right there.
Well, let's talk about those battles before you jump in, Tone. Right guard, I think you're right. One concern about, when we talked to Isaac in the spring, he mentioned he was out there in OTAs and but remember, it was all 7-on-7, as you mentioned it. So there's no teamwork. Obviously, there's no hitting. You're not allowed to hit.
Right.
But he mentioned he was not cleared. He's not fully cleared, and he might not be fully cleared for day one of training camp. So there's a little bit of opportunity for Jack Driscoll, who, as we know, is a Nick Sirianni favorite. So that position, I want to get your thoughts on, but also the third receiver spot, which essentially is a starting spot, depending if you go 11, 12 personnel. And I think it was our buddy Chris Franklin who brought this up. So I thought it was a great point. I want to run it by you. Everyone just kind of defaults to Quez Watkins. It might be counterintuitive, but it might be better for the Eagles if Zach Pascal's playing more, because if he's playing more, that means they're ahead late in games and they're trying to run the football to close the game out. In other words, if Quez is out there, you're trying to throw the football, you're probably behind, you're trying to catch up. I thought it was an interesting point Chris made. So those two particular positions, right guard and third wide receiver.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful not to become too predictable. When defenses see Pascal on the field, they're going to say, okay, let's look for the run here because he's the blocking guy. And if Quez is on the field, hey, they're going to throw because he's the pass catching guy. So, Sirianni's not going to let that happen. Where, we saw last year with JJ Arcega-Whiteside, he was really, he wasn't on the field much other than the block. So, they didn't want to become too predictable with him. And they had to show some passing looks. But, I think Pascal and Watkins, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the lion's share of the reps there, because they are both the battling for that third spot. And I just think that, the history with Sirianni and Pascal is going to let Pascal play. I think they're going to probably end up splitting reps. And I think that they're going to throw it when both are on the field and they're going to run it when both are on the field. That's just the way I think it's going to be. And, getting back to your question about Driscoll and Ciamalo, and it was interesting to hear Isaac say he had a second surgery to remove some hardware in February that was put in to deal with the Lisfranc surgery he had in the fall. But is Driscoll going to be healthy? We haven't talked to him this OT. I mean, he 2 years in a row, he's been in the league. He's ended his season on IR. He's not exactly a bastion of good health either. So is he going to be healthy when camp starts? And if those two guys are down, who's going to be your right guard? Sua Opeta, Josh Stills, who I like a lot from West Virginia, or maybe it's Sills. Maybe he's the guy. But one of those guys better be healthy, once camp gets underway and starts rolling along, because I don't know what's after those two guys.
Yeah. Ed, I harken back to you and John's top 25 list. And again, number 5, Dallas Goedert. I'm completely satisfied with that spot, right? But I want to take it a step further. Dallas Goedert is someone who, from the very beginning, we knew he had talent, but he was always playing behind Zach Ertz, for the majority of his career, the first 2 years of his career, and most of his career. And this past season, it wasn't until about maybe week 6, week 7 where he started to get number 1 targets. I think Zach Ertz was traded after that Tampa Bay game. So it begs the question: what if Goedert was the number 1 from the very beginning? He ended the season with about 840 yards by being the number 1 after week 7. Most of his yards came from week 7 and beyond. But what's this young man's ceiling truly? How great can he be? Because if you really try to hit his pace at the rate he was putting up yards, at his production was amazing for a guy who only started getting first team reps after week 6, week 7. So you guys have him ranked in your top 5. And John, you can answer this as well. What do you guys believe his ceiling is, and what's his floor? And what comparisons could you guys make across the league?
I would say with Goddard that, he had those 2 games last year, back-to-back over 100-yard games. I think it was against the Jets and then the Commanders. He went for 105 and then 135. But then we saw other games where he was, 2 catches for 23 yards or 3 for 38. So, I would like to see a little more consistency in the targets that they give him. Now, of course, it's not going to work out that way. I know every week is based on the game plan and who you're playing. But I would like to see him at least get 5-6 targets every game, maybe 7, get him in that range. But, you have other mouths to feed in this offense. So it's going to be difficult for him to get, 10
that's the problem
in the game. Yeah, it's going to be tough for him.
And real quick, just to add in for you, John, just to add more context. I know a lot of people are excited about the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown chemistry. I'm more excited about how Dallas Goedert can benefit from having a guy like AJ Brown around, and I'm more excited to see that Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts chemistry, be taken to another level, because I firmly believe Dallas Goedert has the talent to be the focal point of this passing attack.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I was going to bring up, and Ed knows this as well, and I can say it, but behind the scenes, and then Nick said it in front of the camera, so I can say it now. He would always say, the offense, the game planning starts with 6 and 88, which was Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert in the passing game. Last year, once Zach Ertz left, and it became, as you mentioned, sort of Dallas Goedert's job alone. And I think as the season wore on, it became clear that Jalen was more comfortable with Dallas Goedert, and it became sort of 88 and 6. But now the problem is AJ's number 1 now. AJ, it's going to start with AJ, and I think they're going to start the season. It's going to be AJ, it's going to be Devontae, then it's going to be Dallas. Now, maybe that changes, but, AJ Brown's presence might make things a little bit more difficult when it comes to the targets for Dallas Goedert. Doesn't mean he's not going to be as good as a player. The Eagles have just gotten better. And I think, there's a guy who used to work for the Eagles on Twitter, Ed knows, and everybody should follow him. He's at The Honest NFL. Tremendous follow on Twitter. He put up something from Sports Info Solutions, which our buddy Matt Manicherian's also on the show. Dallas Goedert, this is what unbelievable to me, was atop the entire NFL when it came to blocking efficiency. Better than every single offensive lineman, never mind tight ends. Now, he doesn't block as much. Offensive linemen, that's their job. Dallas only does it on occasion. But
John,
when he's asked to do it.
Can you explain that stat as far as blocking efficiency for those who may not understand?
Well, it's just, one of the advanced snaps. So basically they look at, they look at the film and they grade what you're supposed to do on a particular play from the efficiency standpoint. Number 1 in the entire league was Dallas Goedert. Number 2 was Creed Humphrey from the Chiefs, which is pretty unbelievable.
Wow.
As a rookie. But it just blew me away. It just blew me away. And that's why I look at Dallas Goedert as a pure football player. And you were saying, what's his ceiling? Well, there's George Kittle, there's Mark Andrews, there's Dallas Goedert at tight ends in the NFL, in my perspective. Now, Travis Kelce, great receiver, tremendous receiver, but he can't block like those guys. He's just a great player, but tight ends aren't as valuable as obviously quarterbacks, wide receivers, different positions, offensive tackles. But man, as a pure football player, and that's where I went with our list, Ed's and I list, he's phenomenal player. And I think people, if anything, he's a little bit underrated.
Here's something on Goddard too, in terms of the odds makers. Their Bet Online released some odds yesterday, and Dallas Goedert, they have him for 700.5 receiving yards, the over/under line for that, and then 5 touchdowns. Now, 830 he went for last year, but again, like John said, AJ Brown's your number 1. I think Goddard's going to drop down, and maybe, into that third part of that offense. But we don't know on a week-to-week basis how they are going to attack defenses. So he could have a larger role one week and maybe not so great the following week because of the way the defenses are lining up. But the one thing that I think with Goedert, Jalen Hurts, one question about him is throwing the ball over the middle.
Yeah.
He seems to hesitate doing that. And I think that's where Goddard's going to have to make his living this year, is over the middle against the linebacker, matched up against the linebacker or even a safety, because defenses are going to have to concern themselves with guarding the perimeter with Brown and Smith. And they're going to have to watch out for the slot with Watkins or Pascal or Rager, whoever you're talking about there. But Jalen Hurts has to prove that he can be consistent throwing that ball over the middle.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Let's stay there for a second. Sorry to cut you off. I like where you're going with this, because we talked about Dallas Goedert and Hurts' chemistry, that trust building as the season went. As the season progressed, Goedert became the guy, right? And Goedert made his living all over the field, outside the numbers, inside the numbers, and Hurts threw plenty of balls at him that weren't the greatest, but he had trust that Goedert will get it done. One ball in particular that I can think of is the Washington game. I think it was a third down. Hurts just threw it in the air. It was a prayer, and Goedert somehow brought it down and was able to sustain the drive. Now, I bring it up to say, how much will trust be a factor in terms of Jalen Hurts improving his efficiency in the middle of the field between the numbers? Because again, we know that we know the numbers indicate most of his throws happen outside the numbers. I believe over 70% of his throws were outside the numbers, something like that. I'm not entirely sure,
right?
But how much will trust play a factor in Jalen Hurts increasing his efficiency, or just his amount of reps being thrown to the middle of the field? And can that trust between him and Dallas Goedert make him a little bit more willing to make those throws?
Yeah, I think his trust with Goedert is fine. Maybe it has to do more with trusting himself and trusting his arm.
I was just about to say that, Ed. He's got to trust himself.
Right, and trust what he sees. Again, Sirianni's talked about this, is the longer you play in an offense, the more you're able to see what a defense is doing to you. And so I think he has to trust, really. I'm sure he trusts his athletic ability and his arm strength, but I think he has to trust what he's seeing to be able to make that throw over the middle. He doesn't want to throw it over the middle to Goedert and, not see a safety pinching down in a double team fashion and then throwing an interception. So I think Hurts has to trust himself and what he's seeing in order to take advantage of Goedert, who should be open on many plays this season over the middle.
Great bollically challenged minds think alike. Exactly what I was going to say. Ed Kracz, you are a brilliant, brilliant man.
Absolutely.
You can't have two better targets in the middle of the field than A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. Two just big, massive targets. And, Jalen Hurts' passing charts to date should be sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Hole in the middle.
Yeah. Big, giant hole in the middle. It's got to change. And he's got to trust himself, because if that were Tom Brady with those two guys, my God, you can't have better targets in the middle of the field. He's got to trust himself. Ed's exactly right.
Yeah. And, you bring up A.J. Brown over the middle. I mean, that's a good point, because I think we all talk about Brown on the outside, but he can play in the slot too.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll, hopefully we'll see motion. I mean, we saw games last year where Sirianni didn't do any motioning with his offensive pieces. I mean, I think you got to move guys pre-snap, move them around the line. And I think we'll see Brown play some slot, and then we'll see Watkins on the outside or Pascal on the outside. But I think that's going to be one of the exciting parts of this offense, is because you have so much flexibility now, and you have to take advantage of it if you're Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, who's the one going to be calling the plays.
Yeah. That coaching staff, you bring up Shane and the play calling. It's rare in the modern NFL, Ed, that you bring back your entire coaching staff completely intact for a second consecutive season. And from my perspective, I've been thinking about this with the expectations. It's not coming back the same next year, because one of two things is going to happen. the Eagles are going to live up to expectations, and Gannon or Steichen or some of these other coaches, Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, are going to get promotions outside of the organization. Jonathan Gannon almost did already. On the other hand, if they don't live up to expectations, Jeffrey Lurie is going to come looking for Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh. He's going to want a scapegoat, and it won't be back together from that perspective. Eagles have to take advantage of this continuity, this small window of continuity with this coaching staff.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, yeah, it's rare when you see an entire staff come back intact year to year. And you're right. If the Eagles don't live up to expectations, there'll be some heads will roll, so to speak. And if they do, then these guys are going to get promoted probably outside the organization. But they have to take advantage of that. And I'll take it even one step further. As you have a quarterback who's still on a rookie contract, you're not blowing up your salary cap to pay a quarterback. And this is when we saw the Eagles win their Super Bowl, was when they were paying Carson Wentz the rookie scale. And, I know he got them to the number one seed, Wentz did, and then Foles took it from there. But I think, you have Jalen Hurts here still on his rookie deal, and everybody talking about him, getting this big extension if he lives up to expectations, and then he'll make $30 million, $35 million a year, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you have to take advantage of that too, with a quarterback playing on still a rookie deal. Because once the quarterback starts consuming, 15% of your salary cap, then you really have some harder decisions to make. So let's see him take advantage of that as well. The quarterback rookie pay and the coaching staff intact for a second straight year. Two things they do need to take advantage of.
Hey, Ed, while you're here, I had to pick your brain since we brought up the coaching staff, right? Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator. I want to shift gears to the defense side of the ball for a little bit while we still have you. Jonathan Gannon. His defense has to force turnovers. And let's be totally honest, the Eagles historically, the past few years, the past handful of years, have not been one of the better teams when it's come to forcing turnovers. The best year we've had in quite some time was the 2017 year, and that was when we went to the Super Bowl. So clearly, wins or turnovers translate into wins. I believe there's a stat out there where it says the Eagles went 2-5 when we didn't force when we didn't force any takeaways, and we were 7-4 when we did. So the numbers clearly indicate that when we force turnovers, when we force the defense into mistakes, we have a better chance of winning. On top of that, you begin to flip the field. How important will field position be for Jalen Hurts and his development and progression as a quarterback, and also proving that he can be the guy in the future? Because let's be honest, I'm unsure if Hurts is at a point in his career where he can regularly sustain 80-yard drives.
Right.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are in terms of Jonathan Gannon's defense forcing takeaways and how that can translate to Jalen Hurts' production.
Well, yeah, obviously the shorter the field you have to score touchdowns, the better you are. It's hard to go 75, 80 yards consistently over 12 plays without making a mistake somewhere along the line. So, yeah, there's two parts to that. It's the turnover aspect, and I think the Eagles were kind of at zero in that giveaway takeaway department. Last year they didn't give more away or take more away. I would like to see them be on the positive side of that and have more takeaways than giveaways, obviously. And I think some of the things they did with his defense leads you to believe that, that could happen. Adding a James Bradbury at the other corner now, being able to pressure a quarterback. Again, this is all on paper. It looks great on paper. They have to go out and prove it. But, if you can force fumbles with sacks or punch a ball out from a running back or intercept the pass and flip the field, that's huge. But that's the first part of it, the takeaways. And then the second part is your return game. Your punting game and your punt return game. You have to be able to punt the ball and pin a team deep. We'll see if Aaron Sippis can do that. Struggled late last year in the second half of the season. And then who's going to return kicks for this team? Who's going to give them the best chance to, pick up 10 yards field position on a return or field the ball instead of having it bounce and, gain another 20 yards. I don't think Jalen Reagor is consistent enough to do that. So we're going to see. That's when we talked about camp battles to start the show. That's an area to watch, is who's going to emerge as the punt returner for this team. Can anybody do better than Jalen Reagor? And flip that field, help flip the field a little bit. The defense can do it with turnovers, very important, but I think the special teams needs to do it as well.
We're getting closer and closer to training camp, Ed. So it's becoming clearer and clearer that Jalen Reagor's still going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Andre Dillard as well. Those two guys, and add in anybody else you want as well. Maybe even Isaac Seumalo. By the time training camp is over, by the time it's September 11th in Detroit, Jalen Reagor, Andre Dillard, are they still going to be here? Is anybody else in that conversation to be potentially moved as well?
Well, here's the thing. The Eagles don't have to make a trade now. Remember, coming out of the draft, we're thinking, okay, they don't have a safety. They don't have a cornerback to play opposite Darius Slay. They need to trade somebody. And we all thought, okay, Dillard, Reagor, maybe Seumalo, these guys make the most sense. But they since signed James Bradbury, on May 18th, I think it was. Jaquiski Tart, the safety, came on June 20th. And now all of a sudden, where do you need help? I don't see it. I don't see the hole in the roster where you need to move one of these guys to bring somebody in. Now, that could change if something catastrophic happens injury-wise during camp and a hole were to open up. Then maybe you can be more aggressive in trying to trade these guys. But unless somebody's going to give you a conditional – I don't know, second-round pick for Dillard or third-round pick or something good for Reagor, I don't see them going anywhere. I think they're going to be here to start the year. I don't think either one of them will be cut. Now, maybe Howie changes his mind and decides to give them away because someone like a Britton Covey, who's trying to win a job as an undrafted free agent at receiver, rises up and looks so good, they're like, we can't cut him and keep Reagor. So maybe they try to trade Reagor for a 6th-round pick. They cut bait and move on. But that's the only way I see it happening. If some undrafted free agent rises up, like a tackle, like a Coyote Owasika, who you want to put in the lineup somewhere, second year with the team now as an undrafted free agent, then maybe that forces Howie into thinking, you know what, we can't afford to keep a Dillard or a Reagor at the expense of letting one of these young guys go. So I need to do something, and I'll take the best offer out there. That's the only way I see it happening. But as far as a need, I don't think they need to trade anybody with this roster.
He's Ed Kracz from SportsIllustrated.com, Eagles Today. Ed, this is my final question, and then I'll pass over to John. And let's make it a little fun. What's more likely to happen? Jalen Reagor catching 3 touchdowns or Marcus Epps catching 3 interceptions?
Man, I think Epps is going to be the X factor this year. I really do. I think he's going to be pretty good and surprise some people. Now, I'm a pretty optimistic guy, and I probably would have said Reagor. I probably would have said Reagor last year, catches 3 touchdowns. But man, I just don't see that this year. But I can see Epps having 3 interceptions. I really could. I like Marcus Epps maybe more than some people do, and I know the body of work isn't there, but I'm on board with Epps, and I'm kind of off the Jalen Reagor ship right now. Last year, like I said, I would have said, 3 touchdowns for Reagor. He's going to do it. But I would say Epps 3 interceptions, not in a game, but through the course
of course. The whole season, right?
Yes, sir, yes.
All right, read edsi.com/NFL/Eagles. Check out our top 25 list. We will be at number 4. Today. I got to get on that after the show. And the final 3 will be coming up in the ensuing days. So I'll do an either or. What is more likely to happen, Ed Kracz? The Eagles putting up the link to apply for training camp credentials for the Eagles winning Super Bowl 50. What are we at? I don't even know what we're at. Which one's more likely?
Well, I'm going to go with the credentials. Sooner or later, we have to figure that out, right? So I'll go credentials. But listen, nobody thought the Eagles were going to win a Super Bowl in 2017, and they did.
That's true. That's true.
I know I didn't.
I certainly didn't either. So, those things can sneak up on you. But I think the Eagles have a good roster. I think if they stay healthy and get some things to go their way, they can make a push for a Super Bowl bid. But we'll see. Again, let's see how this team comes together and in training camp and in the preseason, and then coming out of the gate, very important. Can't start 2-5. You got to come out hot. And everybody says, "Oh, it's a soft schedule." I don't think the Vikings are a soft game when they open the home season on a Monday night.
No, it's going to be interesting. Those first 4 games, because the Eagles are going to be favorite most likely in all 4. And if they get off to say a 2-2 start, it could get pretty ugly around here pretty quickly.
Yeah, but Detroit, second year of Dan Campbell, and here we go down the schedule path here. I don't want to get sidetracked, but I think it's not as easy and as foregone as people think. I think this is going to be a challenging start for this team, especially given the fact that they were 2-5 last year. Don't seem to value a whole lot of practice time.
Good point. Good point.
And you have some new guys at key positions. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they start this year.
He's Ed Kracz from SportsIllustrated.com. Eagles Today. Make sure you guys go lock in on Ed Kracz pieces. Those guys do an amazing job over at Sports Illustrated. Make sure you guys keep it locked on the top 25. I think number 4 is coming out today by way of John McMullen. Ed, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I appreciate you for making my job that much easier. Grateful to you, my man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Oh, man, John, great shows thus far. You guys, make sure you guys keep it locked. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys also subscribe to JAKIB Sports and also check out John McMullen's pieces on JAKIBsports.com. As my man Jody Mac always says, keep it locked. We're going to put a ball on the show.